So I do have the questions right here because there's a lot that, I want to make sure I want to address it all. And I hope I don't overshare because I tend to, but that's okay. So what are your perceptions and experiences with individuals with disabilities? Early in my life, my perceptions weren't great. I thought that the students in the special education class were not as capable, they couldn't do what we could, and they were different. And then I grew up and started seeing others with disabilities in my life and found out I myself have one. I found out I'm autistic 2 years ago, so that's cool. My nephew has autism and ADHD. And then my boyfriend's brother has pretty significant autism. And then my best friend has cystic fibrosis, which, yes, is a disability. And so throughout all the people I've met mental and physical disabilities. And all those people are doing pretty amazing things. They're the most creative or capable of video games that I've ever seen. My best friend has an entire farm and rides horses despite her lung capacity being at like 60% right now. And so I find that pretty amazing. And then I'm going for a PhD degree in clinical psychology, so I'm not letting my autism hold me back. And I have ADHD, but that's besides the point. Perceptions about disability matter as an educator. Yes, they do. You cannot sit there and think that the students can't do anything and that they're just disabled, and you can't be like that as an educator. Your job as an educator is to see the potential in students and help them get there. It's the same with those with disabilities or exceptionalities. Okay, you see their potential, you give them the resources to get there. Plain and simple. It's not about, yes, we have to fill, state requirements for knowledge, but really it's seeing what your students can do and helping them get there. And I think if you have a negative bias towards students with disabilities, then you're not going to be able to help them get there because you're not. It's just disrespectful as well. And then Eric Weinmeier's statement about society definitely imposes low expectations of those with disabilities, and I think it's really unfortunate. We often think, what I thought in high school, they can't do it. Yes, they can. And so society, they also will look at, those with exceptionalities and think they're different, I don't know how to approach it. Because we don't know how to approach things that are different sometimes. And so we just will label them as low expectation because we don't know anything, and we have our biases that we grew up with, and I think it comes down to getting past the biases. Like in the learning module thing that we did, like it gave a chart of myths basically and like the actual like capabilities, and then what surprised me was also the job outcome. Those with disabilities have higher rates of employment than those who are not disabled. That was pretty cool. I think I got off topic. It says, what is UDL and why is it important? So UDL is Universal Design for Learning, and why is it important? I think it's important because it engages the students and it makes things more usable by people, and it creates customization for things that might be needed. It just allows more resources for people who may need them. The question about college campuses and the statistic, I think a lot of times, at least in my case, and it discussed it in the module, those with disabilities, we've kind of adapted. Sometimes we don't really see that maybe we need, like some assistance because we've just kind of adapted. Maybe that's not the right answer, but it's the answer I have for me. So maybe it's because we don't see ourselves as needing any special services because we've already adapted and we know what we need or don't need, and if we can take care of it ourselves, then we're going to sometimes. At least that's how it is for me. And then pros and cons to the response to intervention model. So pros is, I'm sorry, this is getting long. Pros is definitely, I like that there's different categories of how we can categorize students, because no one student is the same. The con is that yes, there is, the con is also that there are different categories, but the pro is there are different categories so that we can kind of assess where a student is at. So, and have like a guideline on how to approach things. The con about it being categorized is that we are putting people into a box, meaning maybe what we think is going to work for them isn't, because they're in the right box, or they're in the wrong box. And it kind of generalizes things, which is also the point of having the boxes, but I think it's a perfect, not perfect model. I think it could use some tweaking, if that made any sense. It makes sense in my mind. Anyway, this video is long enough. Thank you for listening.